This painting is in its ugly stage. It lacks direction, evidence of skill, and it even has me questioning my artistic choices leading up to this moment. And maybe some of you are wondering, like, what is that? But I'm also wondering that too. I'm figuring it out. And at this stage, I can either scrap it, paint over it, or I can push through the ugly stage. This painting is a representation of me, you, and anyone experiencing the human life. And we all have an ugly stage. When was yours? I can remember the time that I became an artist. That one stands out to me. And it all started in my late teens when I had the desire to become a professional artist. But I had that notion of the struggling artist just ruminating in my mind. So I chose a compromise, which was to study architectural technologies. It seemed like I could draw all day and have a stable job. However, the course was a lot more technical than artistic. So I found my creativity desires being suppressed. And it was also a steep learning curve for me. For starters, I did not know what a 2x4 was when I started, but I pushed through and I graduated and I wanted a job in my field. But I graduated during a recession, so jobs were very scarce, and I put out hundreds of applications and I did not receive an interview. And on top of that, the student loan grace period was coming to an end. So I felt the pressure and I became anxious. And I decided that I would just apply for retail jobs. So if architectural technologies was not hiring, guaranteed retail was always hiring. So I quickly secured an interview and I got a job as an apparel lead at a popular sports brand. And at first, I was really excited for this new position. And I discovered after a few months that I did not fit in. So during the interview process, they described the work culture as like fun loving and like we're a family, but it was not a family. I didn't feel that. So I was like very unhappy. And I was so unhappy that I decided I'm going to apply for art school. And I actually got accepted, and it was great at first. But again, I was scared and I was afraid to pursue art. I was afraid to fail because I had already failed at becoming an architectural technologist, and an art degree didn't exactly promise a job afterwards. So I ended up declining the offer, and I just continued to work at this job that I didn't like and I didn't see a future at. So this was my ugly stage. And the months following, I just became more and more unhappy. My mental health went downhill. On my breaks, I would drive away and just contemplate ever returning, like, should I come back? But I'd come back, and then sometimes I'd take bathroom breaks, and I would just be like, pep talking myself, like, you could do it, you stay. And eventually, I even wrote out a letter of resignation, and I just kept it. I didn't do anything with it. And I held on to it for months, unsure of what to do with it. But I think after a year and a half, I had had enough and I finally quit. And I didn't have a job lined up, that I didn't have a plan either. And I didn't know what my future held, but at this stage, I wasn't afraid to fail. I wasn't afraid to pursue art, and I wasn't afraid of what others might think. So when I quit my job, it marked the beginning of my healing and my journey to my art career. So I quit my job. Now I'm free. I can paint as much as I want. And every day I paint something. And I did this for like the first few weeks. And then I painted something, stepped back and looked at it. And I was like, this is ugly. I discovered I was an amateur. So I had a long way to go if I wanted to be a professional. And in true form, I found another job, but it wasn't in retail, so don't worry, okay? And it wasn't in architectural technologies. I got a job as an art instructor at a studio, and I would go there and learn a lot of information, techniques. Then I would go home and practice these techniques. And I also did this with my graphic design courses that I was taking at the same time. So through this process, it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of self-doubt, self-discovery, but eventually I had some confidence in my skill and I reapplied to art school and actually went this time. Okay. And I learned critical thinking. I learned about conceptual art. I learned the design process, art history. And I learned so much that after this first year, I was able to become a successful muralist. So finally, I had made it through my ugly stage. Okay, so now let's work through the ugly stage of this painting. So this part applies to all of you too, because in the beginning, we're all given a blank canvas and we're given a palette and a set of colors, and your colors might look different from your neighbors, but because we all have a different path to take. And it's up to us to mix and match these colors and paint our canvas into the vision or the plan that we have set out for ourselves. Okay, so now I'm going to work on the painting a bit and just hope it actually looks good at the end of this. All right, so I'm just going to paint in some of the midtones here. Okay, and the thing is, sometimes when we are making our painting, we mix together the wrong colors. And that's how you kind of get that ugly stage. Or sometimes the colors that we mix together don't really pan out to what we had in our mind. But at this stage, you can either reroute, which is just fine. You can come up with a new plan, or you can really be determined to create the plan that you had in your mind for yourself. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm like, please come out like how I planned it. Right? Okay, so as I paint, you can kind of see the picture coming together. You can see the vision. Or maybe not. Where's sugar and spice when you need them, you know? Just Okay. All right. Can you tell what it is yet? It's getting there. All right, I think that's good. Now, next, I'm gonna paint in some of the shadows. So when I paint in the shadows, it kind of reminds me of some of the dark places that we might have to go through in life before we get to our highlights. But it's really important that we actually do block in our shadows because it gives our painting depth. And I always, whenever I block in the shadow, that's when you can really see what the vision is. Well, at first, there's a lot of doubt because you're always afraid of messing up when you're making a painting. And you could apply this to other things in life too. But eventually, you have to actually just trust yourself and just trust your eye. And the thing about painting is there's always another chance. If something that is, or you make something that you don't like, you can always paint over it. So nothing is final. All you have to do is wait for the paint to dry and you get another shot. Okay. Let's see if this looks like something now. Yeah. All right. So, who still thinks this painting is ugly, if you ever did? No one? Okay. Well, I can look at it and I could see some areas that I would probably touch up, add more to. Especially as an artist, you end up being a perfectionist. But as I look at it, it is a far cry from where I started. Remember, before this, I started with a blank canvas. So I'm really grateful for that. And the thing about the ugly stage is it is inevitable and it is frequent. So you might leave one ugly stage and then you mess up again. You enter into another ugly stage. But no matter what stage you are at, remember where you came from and have gratitude towards that. So, with that, I encourage all of you to keep painting, push through your ugly stage, and create your masterpiece.